noticed something really interesting. A lot of people in the West, they don't like fascism. They don't like dictatorships, and that's a good thing. But if you actually ask them, like, why don't you like fascism? Why don't you like dictatorships? Well, they will say something vague, like, well, it goes against human rights. It's not democratic. You know, a vague principle, but being a person that actually was born in a dictatorship and had parents that suffered through it, I would summarize that the worst things about being in such a system is, number one, the poverty. Number two, the lack of accountability for the ruling class. And number three, and this is the most important, in order to have that lack of accountability, they always go for censorship. And so you can have like random people or businesses being persecuted because they say the wrong thing. Now, it's irrelevant if the wrong thing is harmful or if the wrong thing is true or not. What's important is, does it affect the ruling class? Does it affect the politicians? And more importantly, their interests? And if the answer is yes, then it has to go away. And that's pretty much what fascism is. That's pretty much why it's bad. It's because it allows a group of people, which are humans, like you and I, to gain unlimited number of power and privileges without being held accountable. And so, my parents would tell me about the time they were growing up and they would listen to Radio Free Europe and how afraid they were because you weren't allowed to do that. And how the entire mainstream media around them, the entire political apparatus, was flat out gaslighting and lying to them and refusing to talk about the actual issues. And when you did have a source that was talking about the actual issues, which was Radio Free Europe, that source was considered misinformation and was heavily suppressed. But the reason Radio Free Europe was so popular, it wasn't necessarily due to the things that they were saying or because it came from the West. It was because people who lived in poverty, people who actually were under the regime, and they would notice the empty stores and they would notice the empty bellies and the lack of electricity and the lack of water and the lack of heating during the middle of the winter. Their own media was telling them that everything is fine, that you're actually in a golden age. Meanwhile, Radio Free Europe was telling them that that's not the case. And so it wasn't that like Radio Free Europe was opening their eyes, because they were laughing, like they were living it. And they knew that Radio Free Europe is true simply because they're experiencing reality, and, you know, like, the only source of information that confirms the reality, the only source of information that doesn't lie to them, is being censored. And so, in Eastern Europe, censorship was treated like fascism for a while. Like, the very idea of censoring something was viewed with disgust and disdain. Like, sure, you know, like, some things would be censored, but we would always err on the side of allowing rather than restricting. We would look with disgust towards the Nazis burning books, not because of what those books meant, but the very act of censoring information, no matter what that information is abhorrent. That's how people that lived in a dictatorship viewed things. Again, not because the information is good or bad, but because of allowing individual to decide what information the public should have or not, eventually leads to the corruption. Like, those individuals are humans like you and I. They have their own personal interests. They can be bought. They can be influenced. And so, like, putting a commission to decide what the public gets to see or not, initially they may actually follow the mandate. And initially they may actually decide, okay, well, we're only going to ban the things that aren't supposed to be, and we're going to use common sense. But as time passes, they will eventually be influenced by other people. They can be bought. They can be corrupted, just like any politician, any police officer, any doctor. And that is why it's a danger to try and normalize censorship. And for a long time, the West understood this. In the United States, they would write about freedom, liberty, and they would say, this is why we're better than the Soviet Union, because we don't have to censor. We don't have to fear. Here, you can talk about anything. Anything gets published. Our system is superior than theirs. Our people are happy. There is no problem. And so the idea is that a government that's tyrannical is afraid of accountability, and that's why they censor. And I remember we would look towards China at the time, and they used to have the Great Firewall of China censoring the internet, and we would mock them. It's like, how can you live like this? Imagine how oppressed those Chinese people must be. Imagine like a government not allowing people to go on whatever website they want on the internet. Like, why are they doing this? There are other governments on the world that allow free internet access. They're not collapsing. They're not failing. Why are they so afraid? And for a couple of decades, here in the West, people actually did have free access to the internet. You could go and visit whatever website you wanted. You could go and say whatever you wanted. If people didn't like what you had to say, they would mute and block you. If you showed them something vile, they would ignore it or delete it. But unfortunately, it seems that the time of freedom and liberty is coming to a close. And I believe that happened after Trump won the first term. We started noticing censorship, which amped up and amped up and amped up. And it led to the pandemic. And the pandemic was the industrial censorship complex in operation. Like, that was something that I have never experienced before. Something that, I can't lie, it generated awe. I mean, so much effort was put into the pandemic censorship apparatus that it's difficult not to look at it with admiration. Not the result, but the bureaucracy of it, the effectiveness of it. How you would go on the street and you would talk with a random cab driver or a hairstylist and realize that no matter what you say, that conversation would be illegal online. Like, someone would say that you're doing a terms of service violation. And so censorship, it wasn't coming from the government. You could say whatever you wanted about the pandemic. No one would arrest you. It's just that you would be censored off the internet. And once that became normalized, they moved to actually government-imposed censorship. Because once people understand that the culture permits censorship, then they want to codify it into legislation. And so once the pandemic was over, as, you know, they were saying, if only we can save one life, and the next day they were saying to war, because Putin invaded Ukraine, and all of a sudden the entire pandemic censorship went away. We noticed the censorship moving towards the publication called Russia Today. A Russian publication, as the name suggests, but as you can see here, the reason it's being banned on Twitter is because of government requests. Like, the government is requesting this foreign publication be banned, probably because they're considering, well, I mean, the BBC can't compete with this. Like, Russia Today says and publishes certain articles that none of our people in our country can debunk. None of our people in our country can counter-signal. So, like, we need to do the final option. There's no other possibility, no other solution but to censor. And so most people didn't really care, and I gotta say, at the time, I didn't care that much either. Not that it would matter what I care or not. I can't influence public opinion, but it was a foreign publication from a nation that did invade another country. It's like, okay, I get it, because warfare is not just one with the soldiers, but it's also one with the morale. And so if the soldiers lack morale, then they can lose battles even if they're having a numerical advantage or better equipment. So I was like, you know what? I get it. I would have done it differently. I wouldn't have censored a publication. I would have just boosted my own publications. But okay, you know, it's war. Things are different. However, I did say then that what this will actually do is to normalize the concept of censorship. And it seems that lately I was right, because now you don't have foreign hostile publications getting censored. Now you have like entire social media companies censoring. Not because of internal decisions, not because of advertisers, not because of NGOs, but because of government legislation. We are now codifying censorships within Western democracies. And so if you look at what the United Kingdom is doing, they want to censor the entire internet. Unlike China, which was having its firewall to censor its citizens, and sometimes using a little bit of soft power to censor things here or there, least on the surface, like they weren't trying to censor YouTube. They weren't trying to censor Twitter at this level with this hard power in mind. And what exactly is the United Kingdom saying? They're not saying, okay, well, we're going to install a firewall around the United Kingdom so that our citizens don't get to be exposed to what we consider to be bad speech. No, what they are saying is that if you have a website which has a significant number of British citizens, then we have the right to decide to take down stuff on that website. So if you have a forum on the internet or a video hosting platform like BitChute, and it happens to have British people in it, and a Spanish person talks to an Italian person and shares a meme, the British government is allowed to inject themselves there and to demand you're going to ban this Italian person. And this is where we're at right now. And it's not just BitChute, by the way. You get to see Gab. But there's also like a lot of others. I understand the website called the Kiwi Farms is also there. They all have like various responses to this demand from Britain's Ofcom. And Britain isn't the only one, by the way. Like the European Union also has, I believe it's called the Digital Rights Act. And so the mindset is that we need to censor more rather than less. Which, again, goes back to the same concept of dictatorship and fascism. The censorship is not done to protect people. It's not done for the betterment of individuals because, like, you'll notice they're not trying to censor a car salesman that's trying to get a better deal out of you. They're not trying to censor the banks that are giving you a bad loan. They're not interested in your life. They're interested in demanding that the politicians do not get to be held accountable. And unfortunately, the mindset is towards more of that rather than less. More censorship is good rather than less. And so far, I noticed that what they're doing is they're using hate speech to justify censorship. Things that are offensive. In Germany, for instance, calling green politicians fat is worthy of punishment. This is not just like censorship because of political correctness. No, like this is coded into legislation now. Like if you want to create a website on the internet like you did in 2016, you just can't. And it's coded into law. It uses hate speech, sometimes even misinformation. I have seen certain countries that want to add, like medical misinformation or stuff like that under the category of harmful. And also pornography. Like the idea in Britain, and in many other places, apparently what they want to say is that if a website shows any type of pornography, it requires a digital ID in order to remove internet anonymity. And most useful idiots are like, well, I mean, that's great, right? Like, that's great. Until you realize, well, hold on a second. Twitter has pornography. Discord has pornography. The Google search engine has pornography. Basically, what they want is the Chinese system. Like, they want the Chinese system at a global scale. Will they get it? Probably not. But that's what they're trying to accomplish. That's what they're trying to push. They're waiting for the next scandal. And so, BitChute is basically saying that in order to, after careful review and ongoing evaluation of the regulatory landscape in the United Kingdom, we regret to inform to you that BitChute will be discontinuing its video sharing service for UK residents. The introduction of the UK Online Safety Act has brought about significant changes in the regulatory framework governing online content and community interactions. Notably, the Act contains sweeping provisions and onerous corrective measures with respect to content moderation and enforcement. In particular, the broad enforcement powers granted to the Regulatory Communications Service, Ofcom, have raised concerns regarding the open-ended and unpredictable nature of regulatory compliance on our platform. In other words, what they're basically saying is that if you're a British citizen, you can still upload stuff on their platform, but you can't view anything there. So, like, if you're a British citizen, you need to get a VPN. A lot of people keep saying, well, you can get the VPN. And the answer is yes, you can, but it's the mindset that's the problem, right? It's the way culture is heading. It's not the fact that, okay, well, they're passing something and I can find a loophole, I can find... No, it's the very fact that this is their intention. This is what they're moving towards. And in 2016, the concept of a censored internet was unthinkable. Like, the internet is too large, it's too diverse, it's too rich, you cannot censor it. And yet they can, right? So, like, systematically, the government is actually competent. They can hire people that, like for instance, if they hired you to do it, right? And they paid you a lot of money. Over 10 years, you're telling me you wouldn't find ways, if you were to interact with other people, with like-minded individuals, and you were paid to, like, okay, you need to censor, like, find me a way, you probably would. And so Bishop said this. Gab said something similar. I think Kiwi Farms also said that if you're from Britain, they just ban you off the site. But the question is, like, what about the other websites that are silent? And, well, I think they're playing ball, right? So, again, I just want you to understand, like, you can be an Italian talking to a German, and all of a sudden a British bureaucrat can interject themselves into your conversation. Like, this is a level of censorship that I don't think the world has experienced before. And for some reason, little outrage about it, which goes to tell me that, again, this is what people want. What did the left used to say? Silence is compliance. Well, it is what it is. Hopefully, we're not going to end up like China, although it seems that the West is looking at that model salivating. I haven't heard the West criticizing China anymore. Like, back in 2010, they were criticizing it. Now they seem to admire it. Well, not in the sense of praising China, you know, because they don't like TikTok, they don't like that thing. Like, they still consider it as a competitor. They still consider it as something we're fighting for cultural soft power with. But they're looking at their system and they're wondering, well, why can't we have that? Like, you know, I get it. They're bad people with the Uyghurs and the Tiananmen, but, like, their system of control. What if we just created something similar for us? And the answer seems to be, why not? Let me know what you guys think. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.